Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the For Goodness Sake YouTube channel. As always, Mesfin Teklu. Thanks again for joining us. How are you guys? I hope you're not just COVID good, but also that's like totally okay to be at too, considering COVID bad or any other form of it is really understandable if you're there. It's been tough, man. I mean, it's like this month of January has been crazy, from insurrections at capitals, actually, not just the U.S. Capitol, to new presidents being sworn in, and to threats on elected Congress people. I mean, it's really a weird time to live through. I hope that you are trying your very, very hardest to do what you can to not sit through all the doom and gloom constantly, to not have to bottle those negative feelings up. I hope you're finding ways to, if you're not actually, getting some release from those feelings and whether it's getting fresh air or exercise or walks or writing, or creating some type of art for yourself. If it's not actually doing those things, I hope you're learning what you can do and kind of planning to do them soon. Because it's really hard. It's really hard right now. We're still in this weird phase of sometimes we're able to socialize because nothing's shut down, but we're also not socializing and we're not going out as much, because if we're trying to be safe. And there's just not as much open, and there's just not as much activity, and baseline, the things that are open are not where they normally are in terms of human interaction. So hopefully we can start to see life return soon-ish. It probably won't be for a few months still, though. So until then, until we can get everybody vaccinated and until we can get numbers suppressed and new strains of the coronavirus neutralized or sequestered into their own places, develop some rituals that you can hold on to stay strong throughout all this. It has been really hard for me. Just having another semester starting up in the past month has been one thing after another. Big midterm week that we just got through, and I'm finally I can breathe for a second before I got to get right back onto some midterms tomorrow. Homework to catch up on. I mean, I hear you. Tons of things going on in my life that make me feel like I'm drowning, like I'm suffocating. So I hear you guys, and I feel like I'm in a great position compared to a lot of people. So I feel your pain. It's okay. We are with you, even if we have completely different situations. There's people who are dealing with much worse than myself, and there's people who have no idea how to work through what they're dealing with. I have some tools that I've been lucky enough to be taught and to have developed over long periods of time. So I feel good that even though I've struggled, I know how to get through it, and I'm lucky for that. I'm fortunate for that. I'm blessed for that. I have people around my life helping me, supporting me, getting me through tough times. If you're not in that boat, like many people are, I'm with you. I don't have the same boat as you, but there's room in mine, and we got extra oars and extra life rafts. And maybe a motor we can find for you in the back, So I'm with you guys. I know it's a hard time, so I just want to take a moment and recognize that, because it just feels so weird that we're just continuously going back again and not really acknowledging that it's just not easy still. Nothing's just worked out where our problems have kind of been relieved. So my only advice to you is just find people you love, talk to them, connect to them as much as you can, in as many facilities as you can, and as whether it's talking in text or FaceTime or email or in person, do it. It will help. Reach out to people that you can trust. And if you can't trust anyone, find someone. There's resources out there for you. And similarly, do the things that you love or you should be doing. Like that voice is telling you, I should just get off this Twitter feed for a minute. That's me. I'm a criminal, man. I've been on it all the time. It feels like just gobbling up political information and just trying to figure out what's going to happen next. It's not helping me. I know it's not. I know I need to get off of it. So do you. This is your sign. This is your advice. Get off. Find your things that you need to be doing that'll make you feel a little bit better throughout the day so that you can keep it going. And with that out the way, I'm really, really excited for this episode. This is my very first guest podcast, and it was so much fun. My guest Javier has his own YouTube show, Javier Show. Say it twice. Got to make sure you say it twice. And he was a gracious guest. This is my first guest podcast, so give me a break for stepping on his toes a lot. I'm definitely a talker. Looking back, I'm like, oh man, it's like when you watch film or when you go to practice or rehearse something. You're just like, oh, I should have did that. But Javier was a great guest, so I really appreciate it. I think you guys are going to like it. It's very relevant to how the world works today and how our country works today. So, without further ado, this is my exclusive interview with Javier. To just start recording. So, we are live, man. Sorry, we're not live. We're just recording. Yeah, man. So, I'm really happy to have you here. I really appreciate you taking time to be on my show. To give everybody a little background, for my listeners, you're my first guest. So this is a little bit different for how we've done the show in the past. So why don't you just introduce yourself and we could just kind of take it from there. I can explain how I kind of reached out to you and how that happened. So go on ahead.
All right. Sounds good. I am Javier, the host and the creator of the Javier Show on YouTube. Make sure you say it twice.
Say it twice.
I talk all things, you know it.
Yeah.
I talk all things politics, religion, and culture. Those are my top three. So that's it covers a range of topics, basically about politics with, Trump, Biden, policies. I like to get into philosophy here and there. And I even do movie reviews and stuff like that. So that's basically, what I've been into,
Yeah, that's awesome. So I got kind of tuned into you based on, you were on Arian Foster's podcast. And what's funny is, so I saw you on Arian Foster's podcast and I saw you guys went at it twice and it was a lot of fun to watch. Because I think, so this is actually there's two main reasons actually. I'll say there's two main reasons why I reached out to you. The first thing is, so, everybody will see when they click on this, we'll have to have the clickbaity headlines of conservative, progressive, conservative, liberal, we have to, that's just how you do it, So they'll see that you are, for people that know me on my show, they'll know that I'm progressive, or just know me in my life. They'll know that I'm progressive, so they'll assume that you are the conservative. I'm sure people watching your show know that about you as well. So one, you're conservative. That's number one reason why I reached out to you. But not only are you conservative, you're conservative of our generation. Let me say, how old are you?
28.
28. So you're kind of exactly. So I'm gonna be 22 in about a week. So we're on this new kind of era of conservatism, progressivism, and that's one thing I noticed when you were talking with Arian Foster. He was wondering how are you a conservative, man? He didn't understand because it's different now, right? Conservative is different for us,
Definitely. It is something that he had a hard time wrapping his mind around, and it was funny that he didn't really see how I was conservative, but we disagreed on almost every single thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, like you're a decent person, and I feel like we conservatives get a bad rap for sometimes for good reason.
For good
I'll
reasons.
put for good reasons. I have friends and family members and all this that are conservative or Republicans in the more traditional sense. So I love them. We have a great relationship. I can talk with them about stuff. But I can be honest, there are some good reasons why they get a bad rap. So
I think the biggest difference between me and like yeah, your mainstream conservative you might see on like the news and what they
right,
show in the
right,
conservative is because I'm an atheist. I'm not actually
right, right,
religious, you
right.
know. So I tend to see things from a different perspective, I guess.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
That's super interesting to me too. And it actually like it's funny because you still have some of those like the values about like the family structure that you brought up, which I one of cards on the table before we get into everything, like one of the things that I have a problem with, our generation of conservatism is kind of monopolizing certain values, like that's something that you brought up, but that
Yeah.
that's something I'll take an issue with in a bit once we get out to the intro and stuff. But needless to say, like the family structure is kind of like thought of as the more traditional conservative thing, and it has its roots in very conservative policy and whatnot. So
I wouldn't say it's necessarily conservative. I would
right,
say that it's a value that I think many people hold, and conservatives just put more of an emphasis on conserving that value.
yeah, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into that because that's one of my my big things. I feel like it's unfair to you actually because I got to listen to you in 2 full videos where you're talking just straight politics with somebody. As much as I love politics and I talk about politics all the time, pretty much. You haven't my videos aren't necessarily just political, and even if you checked out any of my videos, none of them are just like me going straight through talking about my positions on XYZ. So I feel like you're at a little bit of a disadvantage, where I'm
It's
just kind
it,
of
it's fun, man. I
good,
enjoy it.
good. See that I sense that about you. I sense that about you. The second reason why I reached out to you because I sense that you were a good-hearted person who wanted to talk about things that they care about and defend their beliefs, but isn't necessarily rooted in their beliefs. Like you'll never change them, or that you just have to force your beliefs on somebody else's throat. You're like, I want to just debate for the betterment of everybody, right? That's what I sense from you.
Of course, of
Yeah,
course.
so I actually to give everybody a little bit of background info. I saw one of your I saw these videos about you, and then I just was like, honestly, I got to talk to that guy. And I had just expected. I mean, being that you were on Aaron Fox's podcast, famous dude, which is funny that you didn't even know that this dude was famous. An NFL player, like a former NFL player. I mean, that's hilarious to me. And then I'm expecting about you. I'm just like, oh, well, he's on Aaron Foster's podcast. So he's going to be this, hundreds of thousands of followers and subscribers and, all these comments that, you're going to like not even be able to see mine. And it turns out you're a little bit more of a low key dude as well, which I think is very respectable for a Black conservative, really, because it's very profitable. It's kind of something you mentioned with Aaron Foster.
Yeah.
It's very profitable to be a Black conservative, and you're not going that route. So it really is a sign to me that you're not just a shill, that you care about things, and that maybe you have unorthodox opinions currently, but it's not that they're bad or you're bad.
Yeah, yeah. I see it this way. It doesn't matter how high in the tower you get. Eventually, the fire will reach you. So, you could be Jeff Bezos,
Yeah, man.
Elon Musk. If the country, people are not
Yeah.
allowed to prosper and grow and learn and to live in a world they want to live in, eventually it's gonna show up at your front doorstep. And I don't want to be
Man.
one of those people that just do it for the profit. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right. Oh, I love that, man. I'm so glad. So I actually do this thing. It's a quote of the day. Every episode has a quote that I find relevant to what I'm talking about, that I find interesting, that I feel important is to share with people. And I think that is the perfect quote of the day. And hopefully, as we keep talking, we'll find more because you seem like a guy with a lot of insight. But that's a great quote of the day. So give it to me one more time. No matter how high up you get, the fire will still reach you.
Yeah, definitely. The fire
Oh
will
man,
reach you.
I
It does
love
not
that.
matter because you know how fire rises. It's gonna burn everything below you. Eventually, it's
Oh
coming up.
yeah.
I
Okay,
just came up
man.
with that.
Yeah, that's great, man. I mean, come on, like you're freestyling, you're coming up with gems on the spot. I love it.
Yeah.
So again, one more thing before we get into just kind of jiving about politics and everything, and I kind of start attacking you with all of my pent up, notes about your beliefs. Where is the name Javier? Where does that come from? The say it twice. I loved it. I loved that it was like, it makes you say it twice every time. I love the attitude. Where did that come from?
I'm originally a music artist. I've done hip hop for most of my life, and I never did it to try to be famous. I always did it as a hobby or something that I enjoy to do.
Art, release.
Yeah, and one of the ad libs, because I was going by Javier, but in my music I would say Javier based on like music, and it just grew on me. So I just started, I adopted it twice, and I figured if anything is good enough, it's good enough to do twice.
Yes, man, I like that. I like that a lot, man. That's great. Another gem right there. It's like if anything's good enough, is it good enough to do twice? There you go.
Yeah.
All right, man. I'm excited. I think that I had, like I said, I think I put you at a disadvantage. So I'm glad that you came with a spirit of playfulness and openness, because that's kind of how I'm at it. Like, I am passionate about what I believe, and I can tell that you are too. And I will fully confront certain things, but it really is out of love. And like you said, it's like, we're trying to put out the fires. We're not trying to make more fires, so
of course.
Yeah. So with that said,
so let's do it.
Yeah, man. So let's say there was just a big election. What do you feel about that? So Joe Biden was elected. One, can I be rude and ask you who you voted for? And two, why you voted for them, or if you did not vote at all. I actually saw a tweet that you posted that you did vote at some level. So I know you voted at least. So if you want to share what you think about voting, maybe, or I'll just open that up in that way of like, who you voted for, what your thoughts on voting is, and what do you think about Trump being gone and we have Biden?
I didn't vote for Joe Biden and I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I actually, I voted third party. And honestly, the way I see voting really is, I think most progressives, and I think even conservatives, would want more and more people to vote. And I originally supported Donald Trump in 2016 because I thought that Donald Trump would ignite a reawakening of the human spirit when it comes to politics. More and more people would get involved and start asking the questions and figuring these things out, which I think has been accomplished. I mean, more people have gotten involved with politics than ever before. You know, and it comes with its pros and cons.
Right. And whether we did it because of his great leadership, or because of the opposite of that, that's both have happened.
And I believe at the end of the day, I think everything has to be strategic. I'm not really invested in how people feel about a particular politician. I don't care how he makes you feel or she makes you feel. I care about how do we be most effective, not just in the next 4 years, but 20 years from now. Right. And I saw Donald Trump as something that would ignite a spirit in Americans that would push politics such to the forefront that we have to take these situations seriously. And for that, I thank him. Now, as far as you asked me about voting. I really do feel like the only people who should vote are people who are informed. People who go out and vote because, people who go out and vote just because their mother told them to go vote, or, just because they picking a side because they have to. I don't think those people should vote. I think people should really take the time to understand politics and understand the implications before they go out and cast a ballot.
Yeah. So there's a lot in there already. I'm so happy. Because sometimes it's like, oh man, are we gonna have enough to talk about? first sentence in, I know that's not going to be an issue. You know? So let me start with what you said about voting based off how somebody makes you feel, because this is something that I have, and about it's connected to the strategic, thing that you said about being strategic, and being strategic about making the best things come forward. Because I kind of I just differ from that, right? And I don't differ because I think that like how somebody makes you feel is more important than their policies or something. But I feel like there is like a balancing act that they both are involved, right? Like, so for example, let's just say that, there's a politician who makes you feel meh. Like they don't make you feel good, they don't make you feel bad. They're just kind of like a 50 on a scale of 1 to 100, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's their policy platform, which is like spot on, I don't think that we should vote based on how we feel. And, the opposite of the other candidate, their policy platform is horrible, but they made you feel great. I don't think we should vote based on how we feel in that situation of like, we should look at what their platform is and like, we should be listening to that. But don't you think like, because we brought it up in reference to Trump, right? Don't we think that like, if we just matched up policy platform and policy platform for Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and we matched up like how bad Trump makes people feel versus how like blech, old white dude, been around forever, questioning his motives. Like, don't you think like that's like, despite, I wouldn't say that like all of Donald Trump's policy platform is horrible across the board in every single way. I understand there are some things that like I could agree with, but don't you think that as bad as like he makes people feel, that should be given some type of weight?
Of course, I think that unfortunately, people feelings matter.
I'm glad you're not Ben Shapiro, with the, facts don't care about your opinion.
Care about your feelings.
Right, feelings, yeah.
Yeah, and this is a lesson I had to learn the hard way.
Right.
But feelings do matter. Human beings have feelings, and it motivates people to do one thing versus the other. So, yeah, how you feel matters, but I have to throw in a but here. I have to point out that I don't necessarily think Donald Trump makes people feel as bad as you claim, because 78 million people
74 everybody goes 75. We're rounding down. 74. All right, he was like 74.1. Right. We're rounding down.
Okay, that's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people.
And Biden got more people. I'm just saying that's a lot of people.
Yeah, but so can I rebuttal that with like, do you think all those people were like felt good about Trump or even voting for Trump? Like, do you think they all cast their ballot like like, oh, I'm so excited, like you know what I mean?
No,
like
I don't think so, and I don't think they did so for Biden either. I mean,
exactly, no, for sure. But I do think there's like a level. Like I feel like we're living in a polarized time. Like I remember I had a conservative who I was really close with. They're pretty much my family. They're not exactly my family or a parent of my friend, my best friends, but pretty much my family, man. Like just love them to death. And I remember the mother, she came to me and she told me, she was like, Messman, what am I supposed to do? All right, I'm a conservative. This is her label, right? She said, I want abortion to be legal for women that need it. Not personally, that's not how I, would want to do it, but I want abortion to be legal for women who need it. But I want lower taxes. So where's the party for me? Yeah, man, that's what she said. She said, where's the party for me? So she votes Republican and, because that's what she thinks is in her best interest. But when I've talked to her about Trump, she's like, dude's a pig, We've seen the rape allegations and the cases that have been raised against him. And, we've heard what he said about women and, sexually assaulting them openly and being okay with it. Dude is a pig. Dude's gross. Dude's vile. So she's like voting for him, just thinking like nobody else is better. Like, it's not because like, he doesn't make her feel bad.
Yeah, I get you. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I feel like that's going to be the train of this conversation. It's just going to continue. Like, we're going to have to try and be specific. I'm going to do my best, but
No, no,
I
no.
struggle.
It's cool. I would say that you listed off a few of her concerns. Like he was a pig and he had the rape allegations and these things. I would make the argument that why does any of that matters when it comes to a person's policies and what they will accomplish. Now, let me just point out this caveat real quick. A lot of world leaders throughout history have been horrible people
Yeah.
and have still accomplished great things. So it doesn't necessarily disqualify somebody from being an option. We could agree on that. I mean,
we can agree on that you can do good things and be a horrible person. Correct. And in fact, you could do a lot of good things even, right?
And you could do a lot of horrible things. I mean, you could do a lot of good things and be a horrible leader.
That's true. This is true. So I think that this actually gets to another fundamental kind of like issue that I get at, so you had mentioned, it sounds like it's going to go left field, but I promise I'll bring it back in. So you had mentioned to Arian Foster, you had mentioned him like, what do you think about the fact that capitalism has, raised the most people out of poverty in history? And, I know that to be true. Like I know that there is like empirical evidence, right? I know that there's also like empirical evidence of like, if we change the number of what we call poverty from like $1 a day to $2 a day, or like to $5 a day, the numbers are a lot fishier, but just granting that, right? That's a big issue, right? Where what you're giving me is like a utilitarian argument, right? Like if somebody does good in this area, despite them being a morally bad person, if everybody could even agree on what's morally bad, if we call them morally bad, but they do good in this area, we have to, shouldn't that be acceptable? Shouldn't we just allow them to lead and, ignore the fact that they're a morally bad person? I think that we should reject that idea. I don't think that we should, you're into a little bit of political philosophy, so I think that you'd appreciate this. Like, I'm reading about John Rawls right now. So John Rawls had a theory of justice that was like, basically, if you didn't have any idea about whether you were black or white, male or female, gay, straight, trans, whatever it is, poor or rich, how would you decide society should be? And if you could talk to everybody else under the same conditions, veil of ignorance, my man, that's what I'm talking about. So veil of ignorance has been used to justify utilitarianism, but he uses it to justify a theory of fairness, which I subscribe to heavily. And that's why I think that that's a big difference between where we're thinking. And that might just be something where I can't convince you this, or you can't convince me that. We might just never agree. But I really do think that there's an important way of thinking. That's like something that we should think about. Like, is it just okay just because there's like a utilitarian increase? What I mean?
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. What is politics except utilitarianism? What purpose does politics serve if it does not increase certain outcomes?
No, you're right. Like it is the idea is to increase certain outcomes, but there is a different, it doesn't have to be based on utility. Although our society, with the people who our founding people, chose to listen to, they did go for utilitarian outcomes. You're right. Like that is just how our society was shaped. But, John Rawls coming in like the 90s or 70s, coming up in the 1970s, like decided, hey, maybe we could like be different. Maybe we could organize the good that we give to people around different principles. And that principle, one of which could be like, everybody has these equal opportunities and, equal liberties. But then also like, even if you're the worst off amongst us, even if you're like the most like you can't go to work, you just choose to ignore school, like all these, like you just like have no, you're like the worst. Yeah, exactly. No aspirations, worst lot in life. We still, as a society, should provide you with like a floor of where you can go, of how low you can go in terms of like desperation and, like economic status and like medical care and all this stuff. Like he's like, we should provide a floor and you should still be an educated member of like the political system as much as possible, or at least like your voice should be heard or represented. So it's got all these like complex situations, whatever. But that's really more along where I'm like compelled by, like, is like there is something, even if we can't word it exactly, there is something called morally right and morally wrong, and like people who are morally wrong shouldn't be allowed to lead us, even if they like do good things. Like being a good person matters.
You can't be a leader amongst men and women without being a bad person to a certain
Oh,
degree.
I completely disagree.
All right, so
Don't you think
what do
you're a
you
leader to all your followers?
I believe so, but I'm not when it comes to decision making for other people's lives. I think there are going to be times where you have to be the bad guy or the bad woman.
Okay.
And for example, Obama made people feel good, but at the same time, Obama was bombing a lot of places with airstrikes and kids died.
Okay. Can I have a rebuttal?
I'm not focused. All right, before you rebuttal, I'm gonna say this. I'm not focusing on the fact that Obama was
Right.
doing what he was doing. What I'm
Right.
saying is
Right.
sometimes leadership causes you
Right.
to do horrific
You do
things.
good and bad, right?
Yeah.
And I totally agree. But I think that there's one like there's a couple of things where it's like, one, he didn't bomb those people because he's a or because he's a bad person, right? Like some of the bad things that Trump did were because he's a bad person, right? Like you know what I mean? Like seriously, like when yesterday was like what Biden's like second full day in office, right? And like he immediately comes out and he's like, we're in the middle of a pandemic, we're gonna just like give people more food. Like there's people that are starving out of work, we're just going to give people more food. So Trump didn't give people more food, even though that would just be a good thing to do right now. It's not like, oh, like you're a Republican, so you wouldn't do this, or you're a Democrat, so you wouldn't. I think George Bush, I don't even think highly of him in any way. I think George Bush would have given people more SNAP and EBT assistance during this situation. I really do. I really think that George Bush would have done that, because I don't think he's a horrible human being. And I do genuinely believe Trump is a horrible human being. I do believe he's done some policies, like he's signed some policies into action that like would benefit things that I am happy about. Like, so I'm not saying that he's never done anything that I think is good, but it's not because he's a good person that he did those good things. Just like it's not because Obama's a bad person that he did that bad thing. Like you said, there's moral dilemmas, and like we end up on the right side and the wrong side.
But the problem that with that argument is, for one, I don't accept that a guy could bomb and kill kids and walk off on stage and smile in front of millions of people and be a good guy. I don't think it's possible, but I could be wrong.
Let me give you an argument there for that, because I think that it's important to know that he decreased kids dying by bombing with those drones rather than having what we were doing. Like, okay, that's one thing.
Okay, that's a utilitarian argument. But
that is a utilitarian argument. You're right. But I'm not saying that we can never use utilitarian arguments. I just think like the foundations of our society should not be utilitarian. Like when it comes to certain things where we have no other way to decide, which you could argue to me that like the decision he should have made is like just completely reject any type of foreign military intervention at all. And that would be like the more argument that I'm talking about, of like the Rawlsian view of like, making sure even if you're a Syrian child or, if you're in Iraq, like you're not going to get bombed just because you fall on this side of the world. You're very much right. That is a utilitarian argument. And, I think that there is room for it in some places, but Obama himself was not going to end, the military industrial complex. Like he wasn't, like he couldn't, you know what I mean? Like, don't you think like there's no way that he was going to do that? Like he was talking about things and he tried to get awareness, but he had no power to do that,
Well, I mean, he took the job. I mean, at some point, why are you taking a job that you don't feel like you're equipped to do the right thing under pressure or even against all odds? I mean, I would argue that I don't want to stray too far off from the conversation.
Yeah, but I hear you. We'll get back.
Yeah, but it's something about if you took that argument you made for Obama and say he's not a bad guy, even though he did some bad things. That
Right.
okay. Even serial killers woke up and cooked their daughter's breakfast and went to church.
Did they though?
And
Did they?
yes.
Yeah.
There
all
are
right.
serial killers
Okay.
nobody ever suspected because they were such
Right,
outstanding
right,
citizens
right.
in
For
society.
sure. For sure.
Would you make the argument like, hey, he was still a good guy? Maybe he chopped
Okay.
up a few folk.
Okay. I think that's a fair argument. It's almost like you know what I try to think of is like when women talk about sexual predators or just men who have raped them, and maybe they're not a serial predator, but like they just got them, they were just super drunk and they just raped them when they were super drunk or something like that, like things like that. I think of that as like most of those guys outside of that situation are, you know, you see them and you think, oh, you're a good dude, like you're going to school or you're going to work every day or you're going, you know, you're doing your thing, no problems. But if you ask that woman, she's not going to tell you he's a good guy. So I think of that situation, I think that that's like a good comparable situation to what you're talking about as well. And it proves why the whole idea of utility is wrong. But I do think that there are things that, like, I hear your argument and I actually echo it about him just not doing everything he could against all odds. I hear you. I think that, like, I personally would have loved if he would have gotten on stage and been like, do y'all understand this dude, Mitch McConnell, is a, you know what? You know, like, he is stopping everything. He hates you. Like, he hates me. You know, like, you know, I wish he would have been more like that. But, you know, I've listened to a lot of what he said and I've been one of the most critical people about him. Honestly, it doesn't seem like it now, but you have to take my word for it. I think that he believed that he was elected because he wasn't like that. And he was the type of person to fight, to try and come to some common ground and give up some of his own personal interests and kind of compromise a little bit to try and get some common ground, despite the fact that nobody else wants to do compromise and common ground type thing. So he believes that, he was elected because he was the type of person to try and bring people together rather than being that bully pulpit kind of like, get the F out of Iraq. We don't need to be there. Like, you know, but so I hear your argument there. It's important, but I think that specifically Obama, I mean, come on, man, look at literally, can I ask you something? Do you think, because this is what I think it's pretty clear to me, and this might just be my own arrogance, but I think it's pretty clear that Obama being elected Donald Trump because he was black. Like, regardless of what his policies would have been, it was because he was black. No, I mean, you got to tell me if you think I'm wrong.
You have to ask the question. I think when Obama was running for office, did he not run against another white guy?
Yeah, 100%.
So they had a choice to choose the white guy instead of the black guy.
Yeah, no. I don't think that I don't think that people who were voting in 2008 or 2012 hated Obama, you know, or like, no, I wouldn't say that. I don't think that people who were voting in 2008 or 2012 were like, oh, I need to vote against him because he's black. I'm saying that, like, the fact that he was president for so long and the cultural changes around the country, kind of like, he epitomized them, you know, like him in president for in the office for so long, mobilized for a dude who would say racist things and just be openly sexist and just spew things.
I think Obama set the conditions. I think.
Wow.
And
set the conditions in 8 years, though.
A lot of people like to ignore the fact that Black Lives Matter started under Obama.
No, that's true.
Martin started under. A lot of these things were happening when Obama was in office.
I mean, like, Obama didn't kill George Zimmerman, or didn't kill Trayvon Martin. George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin, so that's its own thing.
Yeah, but you're right. A lot of the tensions were rising as Obama was in office, and I don't think Obama appropriately reacted to those things in a way that would have been most ideal for the country.
I think that the things that he did that were good in those situations, he didn't broadcast them because maybe because of his own demeanor, because he chooses to be kind of more the modest, trying to call people down rather than like flaunt what he's done well. But like one thing that he did after what was the Baltimore shooting?
You're talking about
Michael Brown, maybe?
I think it's Michael Brown.
I mean,
Hands
dang,
up,
like
don't shoot.
yeah, isn't it sad how they all just run together? It's like, you don't know Ferguson, Michael Brown, whatever. So anyways, there was either the Ferguson shooting or the Michael Brown shooting that led to a huge uprising of, like you mentioned, the Black Lives Matter. And what Obama did was like have his black attorney general as well. That was under a black attorney general that the Black Lives Matter came around. What he did was have Eric Holder, his black attorney general, launch a nationwide investigation into police departments and see their taxes. And that's how we find out how bad the Baltimore police, how corrupt they were, Chicago Police Department, how the mayor had,
but it wasn't about what Obama did. It was about how he made people feel, like you said earlier.
But isn't that?
Go ahead.
No, please. I'm dominating the conversation, and I feel bad. I need to let you at least have your saying too.
No, it's cool.
You're a gentleman.
I think Obama made people realize that just because he's black doesn't mean he can fix these problems.
That's true.
And this goes deep into the psychology of black people in America. Black people have this idea that if we just have more black people in power and more black people in certain positions, that somehow is going to fix all of our problems. And when these black people get in power and the problems don't get fixed, we somehow think that it's due to the failure of that person. It's not. What really matters is how we change it, because the president doesn't have the power to really change the things that really matter for us to get to where we need to be. And I think that was a backlash against Obama, because there are a lot of black people who were upset that Obama didn't do more for them, which he was in a tough But
it's not black people who elected Trump though. So like, you're right. And maybe, I mean, like, black people voted for Hillary Clinton even by at margins of 9-1, 8.5-1. So that's what, you're right about that. That was an issue. And that's probably an issue we still kind of are sifting through, with that's probably why in Georgia, and you're in Georgia, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why you guys came through. I know you probably weren't too happy, but I don't really know what your opinion is, but my boy Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, John Ossoff is it's cool, but Raphael Warnock is a legit MLK Democrat, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's kind of some good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely not looking forward to him getting it. I really didn't want any of them to get it. I wanted to start over.
What's your deal with Raphael Warnock, man? That guy is legit continuing the legacy of MLK. You know what I mean? All his positions, anti-imperialism,
Well, I mean, for one, he's a preacher. I'm an atheist. I don't get too high off my horse off of preachers. I mean, but that's nitpicking. I'm just saying
that's a little nitpicky. I'm glad you can acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But that's fair. I get you. There's a bad history with Christianity and controlling our government. I can kind of understand that.
To me, it came down personally to black people. As somebody who is an atheist, somebody who speaks out against religion and these preconceived notions on what black people are supposed to be like. Whenever I see somebody pulling those strings to get votes and to pulling on that, black people's identity based on the history of this country, it bothers me because I really couldn't tell you mostly any of this guy's policies. Even when I watched his commercials, I really didn't see much of policies there. I saw more of, pandering to a certain image. I am the black preacher who, taught in MLK's. And to me, it's just, it doesn't, I don't like that.
Yeah. And that, you know what, honestly, that's somewhere that I feel like I can agree with you on. I didn't feel that with Raphael, and that might have been my own biases or whatever. I think that he's a genuine person for different reasons, but to put him aside, that's somewhere I can resonate with you with, that I feel like it would be hard for, I'm not the type of person that's oh, black people have some superior knowledge. We're the chosen people from Israel, we know more than white people. I'm not that type of person. There are certain experiences that if you have that experience, it gives you knowledge, and you have to learn from something. I don't have the knowledge of being a woman or something. So there are some things that I've had to learn from women, you know, to try and remind me of. And then it's like, oh, you've taught me, I can learn now. You don't always just like, you know, have some esoteric knowledge, you know. But I will say that this is one of those things where I don't think that white people probably have a good understanding of what it feels like to, you know, experience, like where you are kind of always trained to see people as pandering or like as like, you know,
Pulling at those,
manipulative.
yeah,
Yeah,
pulling those
exactly.
strings. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's a responsibility. I feel like it's unfortunate, but I feel like that's as a result of that, one, like, you know, my family, my girlfriend, like everybody in my life, like, you know, they know that I'm kind of like paranoid for that. Like when I'm seeing commercials or I'm seeing like actors or musicians, like I'm always like, oh, they're like, you know, they're so fake or they're pandering. Cause it's like, we're trained for it. We're trained to, see that
and
and
and I could be wrong. I mean, I could.
exactly.
He could Warnock could just be who he is, and it's
Right.
that's the real him. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the thing about the left and progressives, liberals, and this is where my conservatism really kicks in, is I hate identity politics with a passion. And in my introduction, when I told people who I was, I didn't talk about how I grew up in the projects and I spent time 5 years locked up and, I was dirt poverty poor and, gang lifestyle, the whole 9 yards. And one thing that I am so happy of is that I never allowed people around me to define me based on a certain characteristic that I couldn't change. And this idea that the black community or the LGBT community or the white community all think a certain way or have certain experiences, and it doesn't necessarily translate into the real world. And
Right.
I hate identity politics. I
Mm-hmm.
hate when people put me in a bucket or in a basket of victimhood or whatever because of my skin color.
Mm-hmm.
I have never been a victim, no matter when I was serving time, no matter even in poverty. I never took on that mentality of I'm a victim. And I think it has excelled me. Then if I had taken on that identity, I think it would have held me back because I see it every day in my brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'll tell you what, like I heard you say that a little bit, like you just barely mentioned that. I'm glad. Appreciate you leveling with me like that, because I can hear your passion. I can feel, your a little bit of your story, just a bit of your story in that when you're explaining who you are, not through the lens of just a race or just a gender or just a whatever else. I see how it conveys a little bit of who you are, and so I was always lucky. My mom is like the super mom, like she was constantly telling us how much we were loved, how much I was loved, how much, I could do whatever I wanted to do. Like there are no limits. And she was constantly pushing me, we have this thing where it's like, if the goal that I'm striving for, the bar is set here and I get here, guess what? It's time to go here. And then, so
Yeah.
that's just how I was raised, and I think that that's like you mentioned, like being able to be an individual is like honestly, personally, what I think is like, it's the blessing of life, like you get to experience who you are and you get to like show the world who you are and you get to be unique and you get to just like be yourself. Right. So that's like seriously,
And I,
a
I
great,
do understand the argument that white people started identity politics. You know, I'm yeah, I'm not living under any illusion that white people didn't
good,
start it,
good.
but I
Yeah.
was always taught two wrongs don't make a right.
True that. Quote
And
of the day again.
you know, and I refuse to let somebody else's actions define my actions and how I
Yeah.
see the world and
Yeah.
how I behave. And I
Yeah.
think that's the era that the left is taking because they
Yeah.
started it, that we somehow have to retaliate with the same mentality to even things out. I think it's a mistake.
Yeah. So I have like kind of like back and forth beliefs about this because like part of me, thinks about the fact that yeah, they started it in, not that we have to like equalize, not that we have to like do it the same just to make it even, but that like at some level there has to be a way to respond, like to make things better. And like, I don't think that when people are like, there needs to be justice, right? That's what I think about. Like, there is still injustice in today,
You
and there,
can't you can't fix it. You can't. I Now when I say you can't fix it, I'm not saying that you can't fix certain problems that we're having now. But
right?
I
That's what
think
I'm
the
talking about.
okay.
Right.
Well, go ahead.
I know. I feel where you're going to. Like, you can't make right what happened in the past, you know. And I do. I see what you're saying with that. I think that there are things that are remnants of the injustice of the past that are therefore injustices today, and there are things we can do to respond to that. You know, do we need to call those things, you know, uh, I do, you know, I'm going to take a stance. Yeah, I do think that, like, okay, so if we look at like the urban communities in America, right? Urban
Mhm.
being code for Black dominated, you know, inner city, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
um, you know, if we look at those communities and we look at the fact that, you know, historically they were intentionally designed to be unprosperous and, you know, segregated and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now there is still a lack of funding into those communities um, as a result of that racist policy. These racist outcomes still occur today, right? Could we agree on that? I
uh,
know.
to a certain extent, I can agree with you.
Right.
Yeah, but
Like there was a
it sounds like learned helplessness. It sounds
no,
like
no, man. Like
the
I think
argument. That's the argument, though. The argument is because of all of these things that has happened has led us in this place, and the only way to rectify them is by the people who benefited from it to rectify it.
no, I don't think. I feel like, you know, like I feel like so I lived in a suburb in Minnesota, right? Like I didn't live in, my mom, a white woman, grew up in the inner city of North Minneapolis. Like, you know, it wasn't as dangerous and bad. Now it's kind of deteriorated over the years, lack of funding and stuff. But regardless, like it was still like the hood, you know, like she legit, I shouldn't even put quotation marks. She legit grew up in what we call the hood. That's why I put in quotation marks. I did not grow up in that. I did not grow up in, you know, poverty. Like it wasn't always like, you know, great, perfect situations all the time, but you know, we always had a place to live and a, you know, food over, you know, food in our stomachs, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Yeah.
and the other thing, like I went to a good school, like it was a public school that was like, you know, quality education and like great teachers, like very educated, caring, you know, a lot
Yeah.
of time, activities, a lot of funding for activities. Like, I mean, like we had a good school. So that's like what I'm trying to get at. If I go to North Minneapolis, my mom's school that she went to, actually, the high school that she went to was like this close to being shut down. I think it was shut down for a period, but they got this dude who's now in the NFL. Like he was just like a really good basketball and football player. And he just like
Mhm.
brought fans to the school. So like people had enough money when he would have games, like they had enough money through pretty much him like being a great athlete to keep their school open.
Yeah.
So that's a digression. I'm sorry. My point is that like I'm not going to get as good of an education if I go to that school. Like, right? Like we could agree, right? Like it's just like,
Uh, let me point something out though.
okay,
Growing up, I didn't go to bad schools. I mean, it was probably bad compared to a lot of other schools, but we had books, we had teachers, and
yeah,
maybe not the best teachers or whatever, but it was enough.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
I can tell you at firsthand experience. Now, my experience doesn't translate over to all Black people in all areas of the country. I would never make the claim that what I went through is universal to all
mm-hmm,
Black people in different areas.
mm-hmm,
But the amount of my peers, including myself, who had access to all of this information, we didn't care.
yeah,
We didn't seek out
yep,
books. We wasn't in the library trying
yeah,
to find
yeah,
information and knowledge. There was a mentality
agreed,
in my community. Nobody cared about school.
mm-hmm,
Nobody
mm-hmm,
wanted to learn. I didn't go to college to become as intelligent as I am now. I did go to school and get a business degree, but I didn't study philosophy or
mm-hmm,
politics in college. I
mm-hmm,
learned myself. It's a
mm-hmm,
mentality. And I think that it's an escape or a cop out to blame everything on the lack of education or schools,
Okay,
especially living in a day and age where we have access. I know
that's
poor
true.
people with iPhones that have better phones than me.
That's true. And there's a reason for that. That's because, you know, iPhones have gotten cheaper and cheaper over the past 30 years, and houses and daycare and education has gotten more expensive over that year. Healthcare has gotten more expensive over that same period. Those are reasons, but I hear you, and you're right about this. Like, I am not going to make the claim that if we just have better schools, or if we just have like, yeah, I mean, let's just keep it with schools. Like, if we just have better schools, then everybody would just be good. I won't make that claim at all. I'm not making that claim, but I will say you're right that it doesn't make all the difference every single person. Like,
And I'm all for making schools better.
and I'm
I'm
all
all for
for
that.
it. And I'm
Yeah.
all for,
What I
improving.
don't, yeah, but what I don't get, and I'm gonna let you talk.
Yeah, 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 please, please.
What I don't get for the life of me is why the left doesn't spend just as much energy and time that they do talking about white oppression and schools being poor. Why they don't put that much attention and time in changing the mentality of Black people in these situations? Why they don't shine a spotlight on the Black culture and the negativity within it? I'm not saying all Black
Yep,
culture is
yep,
negative, but the parts that are negative, why don't the left spend just as much time talking about those things which are crucial?
right. So I feel like that's a loaded question because this first thing we have to divide who on the left are we talking about? Because I feel like a lot of times what we do, and this is guilty of people on the left as well. We take like politicians and like the average American, whatever that means, like the working class American, and then like the college going Americans, and we say they're all the same thing. We say they're all the right, they're all the left. I just did that backwards, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Like, because I think it's important to separate because it's like my mom would be like an example of a working American who's on the left. What she talks about in terms of like politics and what she thinks the world needs to be better is completely different than my friends who are on the left in college or the politicians who are on the left in politics talk about. Like, it's completely different. They're all in
I
different
get you.
worlds.
I
So
get
like,
you.
I feel like it's important to separate. I do think that like, especially people young our age, not really into like the facts on the ground, probably a lot of people who are in like elite universities, probably a lot more like white people who don't understand like Black cultures or like what it means to live in a ghetto or like understand like the
It wouldn't
difference of
matter.
lifestyle that is.
It wouldn't matter anyway because I grew up in the projects. If you
Yeah,
found
but you
another guy just like me that grew up in the same projects, we would have two totally different
No, exactly.
experiences on.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
But you would at least know that you just putting up a school isn't going to solve everybody's problems. You
But
both
that
would
guy
know
doesn't.
that.
No, we wouldn't.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, you're different people. That's true. That's very true. That's
Yeah.
100%
I,
true.
I speak to a lot of Black guys
Yep,
who
yep,
grew
yep.
up in
That's true.
similar situations who think totally opposite of me on
Yep,
all of
yep.
these issues. And
That's
I
true.
really feel like I'm a canary in the coal mine on a lot of these things, but I'll let
Yeah.
you go ahead.
So let me respond to that then, because I think it's important. Like, what I was thinking about with schooling is like, okay, so if you take my school and your school and you say, okay, well, mentality, the educate, like your side is like saying, you're saying like, schooling can't just solve everything, and I'm saying, okay, yeah, mentality isn't just the answer either. The way I can prove that
It's
schooling is
80%.
probably
It's about 80%.
it is 80 schooling is
I'm
80%.
no mentality. I
Oh, I
think
disagree. I would
I
say
think
I would be open to like a 70-30 split for education 70%, because if you look at everybody in my school, regardless, like I guarantee, there's people who just like end up hooked on drugs. There's people who, top to bottom, there's probably somebody who will go on to be a senator or a doctor. Many, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a huge, spectrum of where everybody's going to end up in terms of like what we call success. A lot of it has to do with mentality. Or like there's at least a part that has to do with mentality. But why is it that let me ask you, because I don't know about your school. I don't know where where you went to school. I don't know how anybody ended up. Do you think there's a giant spectrum like that where there's a good amount of people who made it to some successful job, some job that they love, maybe is super successful, maybe the job isn't super successful, whatever. And then there's also people at the bottom who, regardless, like they just also, didn't make it anywhere. Do you think that you have that spectrum, as many people on that spectrum?
I Hold on. Ask me the question again to make sure I'm understanding exactly what you're
So
saying.
I'm thinking that if you look at my school that has a great school, right? If you look at everybody that's gone through that school and graduated, and if you even put in the people who haven't graduated, there's people who didn't graduate, even though it was a great school, great teachers, great activities, etc. Not perfect, obviously, nothing will be. So you have that situation at my school where there's people who just burned out, quote unquote, there's people who graduated, didn't do anything afterwards, and just turned into, whatever menaces of society. We'll just bag on them. You know what I mean? Then there's people who graduated and they didn't do anything else after school. They just worked and they just had a good life. They worked for themselves, or they didn't work, but they did, kind of like, whatever crap. And then there's like people who went on to college, and then there's people who went on to medical school, or they went to become lawyers. And, I'm not saying that your career defines how good you are or what your worth is. I'm not trying to say that, but I'm just saying that, like, if you look at everybody who went to my school, you have a lot of people who went on to many different careers. And then you also still have people, like you said, a mentality.
I get what you're saying.
Who ended up poorly.
You're saying that your school probably produced more of those people who did better than maybe my school did.
Right.
And it's the reason that is. And the reason I say mentality is 80% of it, because I guarantee you that the people who went to your school probably had similar or certain types of parents as well.
I mean,
different culture.
For sure. You can't deny that it's a different culture, for sure.
Now, I'm not saying that the other things don't matter, but I think that at least 80% of it is mentality. For example, you're talking to a guy who went through the worst of the worst. I've seen some things, done some things. I changed my mentality. And even if I didn't get as far as I did, I would have got a lot further. And if you're telling me that if people in these circumstances, because it's not just black people, there are white people who live in poverty.
A lot more, actually.
Yes.
You're right.
Yes. So I tend to think of people in those situations. I don't like to really focus specifically on color, but for the sake of the conversation, if people decided, let me not lay down and open my legs to somebody who wouldn't be a good father.
That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, I get you. If guys in that situation decided to treat women better and to, not treat them horribly or whatever, or not take care of their kids. Now, I'm not saying everybody in these situations do that, but
I got you.
Yeah. If the criminals in these communities decided not to shoot one another or to sell drugs in all of these communities, you can't tell me changing these mentalities. Even if you didn't come out as good as the people in the suburbs, you would come out a whole lot better.
All right.
So they're not helping.
All right. So I agree with you. I agree. And in fact, especially using your example of yourself, I think you're right that I think mentality can change most any situation. Like, not everything, but like, I think mentality can really be the difference in, like, you being anything. All right. But I will say that almost like 90% of people, probably more, 99% of people, of course, we don't have numbers on this, but 99% of people do not have the awareness of that, like you have. Like I mentioned, like my mom.
I didn't have it either.
I know, but and then you did. But I think that still is a type of person, though. Like,
it's just definitely some of that that's innate in certain people.
Right.
But
it's not impossible for other people to get to either. I'm not saying that.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
I'm saying that, like, I feel like people need to be taught that, like, and that is important. So I'm glad that you're like you said, the canary in the coal mine, that like a mentality is important. But I think that there are conditions that can foster that in a way that, like, you don't have to, like, you had some bad situations that, you went through before you were able to learn that. I think that there are, like, good situations that people can go through before they'll get there. You know what I'm saying? Like, where it's like, you don't have to learn it through a hard way. And like, we could just allow people, like, no, education doesn't teach them exactly that the mentality is this. No, education doesn't do everything. No, investing in certain things or whatever, like the free market, right? The free market doesn't do that, right? But
parents do that.
Parents do that. Parents do that. But and
They
so
have
let's
a major impact on the
right.
development of children.
Yeah, it does. So let's take the example of parenting, because this is something that I think that conservatives always get the benefit of, like, being the party for parents, but I think that's BS. Like, if you look at look at the Democratic primary, or even just take Joe Biden. Joe Biden is trying right now to get, like, give parents like $300 a month for every kid that you have, just to, like, help you. And then he's also trying to, like, open up universal healthcare or daycare for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, because he's like, look, we have the evidence that if you hear a lot of words when you're a kid, it will lead to you being able to read better or speak better, and all these different, like this is important. We have the evidence. Let's do it,
Yeah.
And it helps you in life later on. Parenting needs to change, so let's make it easier for them to have resources. Let's give them more time to spend with the children, et cetera, et cetera.
But none of it matters. Like, it matters to some people. It matters to some people. Yeah. But listen, none of it really changes the situation unless Joe Biden is willing to tell people the truth. And the truth is, you need to parent your kids. Like, I could give you, there are rappers with millions of dollars who still buy the stupidest things in the world. Right. You could give somebody all the money, all the resources, and they could still be idiots.
Okay.
Now, go ahead.
But you're 100% right. But the problem is that, like, lack of money is a major reason why a lot of people, not everybody, not every situation, 100% you're right, but lack of money, or just, like, stress about money, is, like, a huge reason. Like, and if you numbered up all the, if this is like Family Feud, and it's like how all the reasons why people are bad parents, like, number one is going to be money and, like, lack of money. And then there's other reasons that's like maybe, like, bad parenting myself. No, it seriously will, man. Like,
we fought the war on poverty, and where has it gotten us? Where has it gotten?
We fought the war on drugs. We did not fight the war on poverty.
We fought the war on poverty as well. You got Section 8 housing, you got food stamps, you got welfare, you got WIC. I mean, you got all of these different programs that people can benefit from that live in certain situations. I mean,
and there are many issues with those programs, right? Like, you're aware. I've heard you talk about the parenting situation where, like, trying to weed out fathers and things like that, like not count parents that are 2-parent homes. If you're poor, then you don't get, like, I mean, that's an issue. Like, and more than that,
I agree.
Accessibility, like, people aren't aware of these benefits. People don't use them when they should. At this point in our, life, we're also we need more Section 8 housing. We don't have enough housing for people in the right areas, right? Like, there's a lot. It's not just that, though. You know what I mean? Like,
I think the history. Yeah, I think the history. Look, I am for helping people. I would never say don't help people, but while you're helping people, you also have to have expectations. And I think oftentimes we think about being a good person to other people without holding them accountable and pushing them to be better selves. And I think that's what the left lacks. I think there's a lot of, we need to help people, but there's not a lot of accountability unless it comes to.
Because I agree with what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah, I think what the biggest problem is when it comes to this discussion is, I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say I go out and cheat on my wife. Let's say my wife understands that I was abused as a child. I went through a lot growing up, and I only cheat because I didn't have the proper upbringing, and I didn't, I wasn't nurtured, and I didn't have the resources and the nice home bringing to make me a better mate. Is that good enough? Do you think if she told me that, do you think that would stop me from cheating, or would that give me more reason to cheat? Well, she understands. She get it. This is why things are the way they are. I have a perfectly legitimate reason to do what I'm doing.
Well, I reject the premise that because she understands why it happens, that she has to just be like, well, there's no repercussions for it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that she could think that all of that and believe it and be like, yeah, I understand why he's doing this. This is where it comes from. But guess what? You need to get your mother to therapy and work out. you know, and
Now I'm asking liberals to do the same thing
right.
with minority groups,
But
especially the
okay,
Black community.
and I hear you, and I hear you. But look, when you know, people offer in the Democratic Party, you know, proposals that we need to open up mental, first of all, free healthcare, and including in that maybe free mental health care. That's one thing where it's like health is an issue that impacts food,
What
is an
about
impact. Malnutrition isn't a thing that
yes,
impacts people's decision making.
yes, I agree,
Go and
but
then, you know,
where's the accountability classes? Where are hey, stop shooting each other? Where is the
you don't think
rhetoric
that
of that?
there's how many? So what are you part of? Are you from Atlanta, Georgia?
I'm from Savannah.
Okay, so it's another big-ish city, right?
Yeah, I mean it used to be the capital of Georgia, so I mean it's pretty decent. It's not as big as Atlanta though. Yeah,
Okay, right. And do you guys have violence there in the cities?
yeah.
Do you guys have community groups that are working all the time saying stop shooting other people, mother effer?
I'm not going to say we don't, but if we do, I haven't seen them.
Okay. Well,
The
I
most
can't
we
speak
had
to
growing up, yeah, the most we had growing up was churches coming around trying to take us to church.
right because they think that's the best way to do it, right? They're trying. They're trying. Well, because I know that, you know, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, you know, all over the countries, there's like stop the shooting. There's like, you know, what are they called? What are the no fire? What are those called? Ceasefires, right? There's like, oh, ceasefire this weekend, like between the gangs, like nobody shoot anybody, like a whole weekend, please. Like, I mean, like there are
There,
so many
yes,
people working on that exact thing, you know, like
there is, but there's not a world stage for it. There's not a national stage for it because when a black kid gets killed by a police officer, there's riots and marches up and down the street. Of course, we should be outraged when a black kid is wrongfully killed by a police officer. I agree. But when you have hundreds of thousands of black men killed on the streets by other black men, there's not marches, there's not politicians and presidents having to speak out about it on the world stage and tell people to stop it. We don't get that same energy. And it's a bigger problem.
yeah, I see. I really do see your point in that, and that's a point from concern. Like you're not saying it because it's like, but what about why don't black on black violence?
No,
Like,
yeah,
who
it's
cares
not
about the
about
cops
that.
killing people? I see it. I see it as concern, but here's what I think: it's a false comparison. So there's two things. One, I think that the like part of it is just the fact that like
Law officers are there to protect you and to serve.
exactly, you know what I'm saying? Like you can't expect like you are a like if I go up, I have no position in society, right? Like I'm a student, right? I have no like authority over anybody, right? If I go into, actually, I'll use an even better example. So I'm when I work in California, I got laid off because of the school shutting down and everything. So, you know, hopefully we can get these vaccines coming out soon so I can go back to California and enjoy my kids. But so I'm a coach in California. So I coach little kids sports, right? Fifth, sixth, you know, fourth, third graders, right? Little elementary schools. If I go up into that school and I have a kid like kick me, throw a ball at me, you know, push me, spit on me, swear at me, all of these has happened except spit on me. I've never been spit on. If I got spit on, I don't know what I'll do. But so I've had all, you know, kids are kids, right? Like they do all these things and like it's like, okay, you're a kid, right? Like you're going to misbehave, you know, like you're not, you know, whatever. I deal with it. I discipline them how they should. I give them justice as much as I can. I try not to be a jerk, you know, I try not to just be like dictator messman up there, but I try to like give them responses where they'll learn, you know, that that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to throw a ball at a kid's face because he made me mad, do you think the parents are going to worry about all the times that I got balls thrown at my face or my genitals or got hair pulled or something? Do you think those parents are going to give a crap about all the times that happened to me?
No, but
That's the
this is
issue with policing. And that's just how it will be.
it's
it's
not
to say
a
that
fair comparison.
it's not, but it's not exactly the same thing, right?
I get you, but I would also make the argument that I would think you would make the argument that don't we as fellow citizens have a moral obligation or a moral duty not to kill one another?
That's 100% true. That's 100% true. And I
Now,
totally.
okay, now it seemed different because police officers are held to a higher standard because, for one, they work for us.
And
We
they should be,
pay
right?
them. Yes, and they should be. They should be. And on mass, most police officers are not killing black people. Most police officers are not murdering black unarmed men wrongfully. Now, are there people who are? It happens.
Right.
There, it also happens with white people as well, which nobody cares about.
Of course, all the white on white crime,
yeah,
gets ignored.
And if you a white person who's wrongfully killed by a police officer, sorry, but you're not that important. Yeah, I mean,
I disagree, but I think that it doesn't make as many headlines, but the numbers get counted, you know, like.
I mean, they get counted, but who's going to march up and down the streets over Billy Joe because the police officer thought he had a gun and killed him? Nobody cares. You know why? Because identity politics. Oh, he's a white guy.
But it's not that simple. But it's not that simple.
I mean, I know.
You're right, though. You're right, though.
It's not that simple. I'm not saying it is. All of these things.
White people don't have a history of being abused by the police. Like, the police exist in this country because, in the way that they do, because they were to enforce segregation. Like, when literally you can track the deaths from KKK, like extra like judicial killings, like when they stopped doing like actual lynchings and like people getting drugged in the streets and like feathered and tarred and stuff. Like when the KKK and other just like mobs just stopped doing that, there's a decline in that. You can just track it. Police killings just shot up at like to the same level. Like literally, it's just like.
So we should get rid of the police then.
No, we shouldn't get rid of the police.
Because that'll never change. The history of the police will never change.
The history of the police will not ever change. But that's what I'm saying. That's why it is a polarized issue. That's why Black people have an issue with it. Like, because we know the history of, or many people know the history of, or they just feel it in their own communities. It's not even if they know the history. It's just like they feel it every day, like they're being like patrolled, like the segregationists before them.
I get
you know. So,
I definitely understand. Okay, go ahead.
But you're right. We shouldn't just get rid of them. But there are people on the left who study these issues and say, hey, it isn't just about white and black. I wish I had the. I'm gonna send you after this. I'm gonna put it in the show notes too. But I'm gonna send you the link to this podcast that was about this dude who has a nonprofit. It's called the Center for Justice and Policing. And it's like all they do is study empirical evidence about policing. And his number one thing is like, if we just look at like, oh, how many Black people are killed versus how many white people are killed and how often, like that's missing the issue. He talks about how we need to look at how certain communities are policed as a whole. What is the methodology of those police officers in those communities?
I've studied this extensively.
Yeah, versus how in my community, you're not getting shot. I could get pulled. I could have a blunt in my hand. I could have a bottle, of liquor. I could be belligerent.
Let me ask you this:
not shooting me. Like
how many people?
My life on it.
How many people are getting shot daily in your neighborhood?
But that's not the point. You can't track it just off shooting.
No. I'm just asking you: how many people are being murdered in your area?
Not nearly as many. Not nearly as many.
How many drug dealers? How many drug dealers are
a lot
in your area?
A lot. There's a lot. They're selling weed, selling coke. Like I have people that I went to high school with. I'm serious, man. Like you have to understand.
But I also want to point out,
affluent communities are not drug free. Like they are literally just drugged up with no problems.
I get you, but apparently it's not resulting in a high crime rate in your area.
But because why? Because if I get pulled over and I had a friend who got pulled over with they both had like a pound of weed in their car, or an ounce of weed in the car. Sorry, I'm getting my numbers mixed up. They had an ounce of weed in the car. That's common. Like I used to be heavy into just smoking and chilling with my friends. Like it's common for friends, the friends that smoke a lot to have like a whole bunch. They might sell a little bit to their friends.
I agree with you. If you get stopped on the same level, if you get stopped at the same level as Black people do in Black communities, you're more likely to get found out about. But that's not my argument.
And not even just found out, you're more likely to get like aggressively. That was a big part of like this dude's empirical research is that like you're for the same amount for anything, you're more likely to just get like roughed up by the police for no reason. You're more likely to just get like, crime like put against like they walked away getting with dogs and
which
stuff, and they did
yeah,
nothing. The police did nothing.
which tells me, well, for
They're like,
one,
have a nice day.
most black people want police in their communities and
Yeah,
want them
yeah,
policing.
yeah.
The biggest victims of black violence is black people.
Of
So,
course.
but the point I would make is that I don't care what the police is doing when it comes to stopping black people and finding drugs and all of that. If you know this is the case, stop doing what you're doing.
Right.
If I know the police will stop me 10 times more likely than he's to stop you, then that means I need to be on my P's and Q's. It makes no sense why I'm still doing the things that I'm doing. And this is what Martin Luther King knew that maybe Malcolm X didn't know early on.
Let's not do that. Come on now.
Well, Malcolm X changed his mind over time.
But not even just that. Martin Luther King has speeches where he said, look, I'm over here talking all this stuff about how I should be telling people beyond the Vietnam speech, beyond Vietnam, that speech. He's like, I'm over here talking all this crap to my dude, Malcolm, and I'm saying, hey, Malcolm, quit being a, radical and quit advocating that we should be self-defense and all this stuff. Just be nonviolent like me. But now I'm living in the most violent country in the world. That's not right. I can't be saying that anymore. Why am I saying that he can't be violent when my country won't be violent? So until my country stops being violent, until you get the F up out of Vietnam, I'm going to shut up because, Malcolm, I can't criticize you. Your country's giving you the example. And that's the issue. That's our country needs to set the example. We can't
This is the point. Martin Luther King knew that no matter how much violence they did to us, we had to remain non-violent. And the reason he knew that
and was what they do to him.
They killed him. But look what he accomplished. Man. But look what he accomplished. I mean,
being the most hated man in America.
That's fine. But true. He wanted to accomplish something, and therefore he had to do what it took to accomplish it. Yeah, I get you.
You're right.
But Martin Luther King knew a few things would happen if he did nonviolence. For one, he knew two wrongs don't make it right.
Right.
He wanted to show the rest of the world that just because violence is being done to us, we don't have to respond in violence.
Right.
He showed the humanity of being humble, and he made them the victim. It was clear who was the victim. Right. The second thing he knew was if you got violent, they were going to kill all of us. Mm-hmm. It was no way black people could put up a fight against all those white people.
But even if he wasn't violent, they still killed him. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, but they didn't kill his dream. They didn't kill what he stood for. You can never kill ideas. That's why you could kill Osama bin Laden and ISIS and Taliban will still exist.
Right. But I think that like an important point that we're not addressing here is the fact that it's not like I'm advocating for black people to just be able to run around and murk each other. I'm not saying that you should be able to drive around and just shoot each other up, and that should just the police should just be nice to you, I'm saying that when I was in high school, if me and my friends wanted to go smoke weed or, when we graduated or something, if we wanted to just go smoke weed, and, drive around in the neighborhood and, not bother anybody, we weren't going to jail. Even if a police officer pulled us over, and it was illegal and I could have, we could have gotten to jail for it. They did not beat the crap out of us. They did not, even just not beating us up, but just give us a crappy time. They didn't just rough us up. And they did put us in jail, setting our life backward, a huge amount, and that's what I'm saying. Where if you go to colleges, the most drug and alcohol abuse heavy places on the earth, and yet you don't see police riding around there messing people up. And I think that while there still needs to be work for separating, ending gang violence and things like this, I think that if you don't have police officers, I think that if you don't have people if you give people economic opportunities, right? If you give them opportunities to work a $15-an-hour job, you're not going to want to stand on the corner to make $3 an hour,
That's a lie. That's a lie.
I think that for a lot of people, not everybody.
You make more money selling drugs than working at Walmart.
Who does?
I mean,
A corner boy?
if you any good at it.
Yeah, but how many people are that good at it though? That's the point. Like,
I
there's
mean,
only so many.
I know some corner boys who, they make more than what I make doing what I do. I mean,
I'm not saying everybody, but there are, and that's fast money. There are people that can make that, right? But there's a lot of people who are not making that money, right? Like, who are still doing the drug game. So
yeah,
I'm
I
thinking,
agree.
look, if you could take half of the people that are making crap money, that's a win, because they have like some $15-hour job flipping burgers. I don't care what it is. They got some dignity flipping burgers. Walmart pays you like $7 an hour minimum wage, man. That's sad.
Bro, if you all right, okay. So
We digressing, huh? We're
no,
digressing.
no, 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 no. Because I understand, like, if you took me at the age of 14 and you gave me an option of making $15 an hour and working at Burger King flipping burgers over selling drugs in the hood, where I got women were attracted to me, I got to move around like I wanted to. I had homeboys that had backed me up. It was the culture around it. People respected me. I would have chose selling drugs any
Mm-hmm.
day than flipping burgers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not everybody will,
Exactly.
but I don't think it's gonna have the impact you think it will.
No. I agree. It's not gonna get everybody. It's not gonna get everybody. So if we have a job like that, if we have education where like you have all these activities, you can do art, you can do dance, you can do gymnastics, you can play football, you can do whatever you have all these activities, that keep you occupied in school, out of school, woodworking, you learn about electricity, you learn about, politics. Like, if we have schools that actually educate people on everything in life, as much as we can, we cram as much in because we're paying as much as we can to everybody that we can, keeping kids in as long as we can, because that's what research says does well for them, So if we have schools that do that, we have these jobs that are like decent and like help people, and
I
we
played
give that like,
baseball, I played basketball, I played
yep,
football,
yep,
I played
yep, yep.
all
I'm
of
not
my
saying
friends. We
everybody.
played all of these things.
I'm not saying everybody.
It's a mentality, man.
You're right. But here's what it is. Some people never get to the opportunity. How many people do you know people that died during that period in your life? Do you know people that died?
Yeah,
How can they change their mentality?
they can't.
There we go.
Change, but their
And that's
parents could
it.
have.
No, but
I mean,
it's too late. But it's too late, and that's my point. That's where I'm saying, all right, we can't change every single person, and I'm for advocating for a peaceful mentality, nonviolent protesting, and love, like, as the center of our life. Like, why are we like humans if we're not supposed to be loving each other? You know what I mean? This is stupid. Like, we're missing out on the whole point of this thing. It's like I watch every movie, and like the moral of it is like, love is what's most important. Ding. And then we leave the movie theater, and then everybody's like, "Fuck you, get out of my way!" Like, I'm trying to walk, or you know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm getting my point.
I think that's the contrast between a liberal thought and a conservative thought.
But I don't think
Conservatives
it
realize
is.
that most human beings are not great people. That's why we have laws. That's why we have government. If most people were good, decent people and did the right thing when nobody was looking, we wouldn't need police officers. We wouldn't need judges and lawyers and a whole infrastructure to protect you from other people.
But here's the thing, though. We have a society that crime has continued to decline over the past 40 years, and we've continued. Actually, it's more like 30 years, but especially since the 90s, excuse me, crime has continued to decline over and over, year after year. This is a bad year because poverty increased and like hunger increased and people didn't have jobs and all these things, like, which is almost perfectly proving my point that, like, when you have jobs and you have food in your belly and you have schools that are good, you don't want to do crime as much because it's not worth risking your life. And that's not going to be the case for everybody. That's not. You're right. People will still end up choosing that life. But if you even take half of the people, or let's even say you take a quarter, you've taken 25% of the people in your population that did all these bad things that we don't want, and they end up killing people, and you move them into a population of people who become productive members of society, become good parents, become kind people. We now have, for the next generation, double the amount of people, that
Yeah,
are
I
raised by
agree.
good parents and
I agree.
that have the opportunity to be good uncles and friends of kids and parents of friends and all these, you know what I'm saying? Like, you actually, like, economies are really good when they grow by 1%. You know that, like, when if an economy grows by 1% over time, that yields exponential growth that is really,
Hmm.
really, really lucrative. Like, the difference between America and Britain and Europe in general, and Africa over the past 400 years was like 100, or was like 1% of growth every year. Like, that's like all
Yeah.
it takes, or 2%. If we could grow the goodness in Black communities by 25%, like, or even a half of that, like, like by an eighth, that's a lot. That's really good over time. We can
That's a
also
culture. That's a
right.
that's a
And we can
culture
include
war.
the culture change too, though. But it's not just, we have to start. We have to also say, if you have a good mentality, if you do have a good mentality, you have schools that you can get far in. You have,
I
food
agree.
in
I
your
agree.
stomach.
You need those things for people
Right.
who are already prepared to receive
Right.
it.
Right.
But
And we do
like
also, and I agree with you, we do also need to get people to that point where they can receive it.
exactly, because you can give somebody a gift and they don't know how to use it or they're not
Exactly.
prepared to use it. So I think from my experience as a conservative, I don't think I've ever been against helping people. I think I probably disagree with progressives on how to help people. And um the biggest thing about, like, even for example charter schools versus public schools and these whole debates that people have, it's proven that sometimes you hurt other people
Yeah.
when you lump, like, that good guy who's ready for a good school, he might not be able to enjoy it as much because all of the other bad kids who are not ready for it will make that experience bad for
Right.
him. So
Right.
sometimes we separate the wheat from the chaff. So
Right.
the ones who will make it will be in an environment to where they can make it.
Right.
And those who are not ready for that, they can ruin each other's lives. But the biggest thing I would say, I'll give you an example. Rick Ross. You know who Rick Ross is, the rapper?
Yeah, man.
Ricky Rose. He
Yep.
had the song. And the song was about he basically was talking a whole lot of gangster stuff, right? And he said something about dropping something in the girl drink, basically on some date rape type stuff, right? People were completely outraged by it. But all the other songs, in the rest of the song, he's talking about drugs, he's talking about
That's funny.
guns, killing people,
Right.
all of this stuff
Right.
that he puts out.
Right.
Nobody cared. That
Oh,
reveals a lot of people's mentality right there. It's
right.
not cool. And the
Right.
reason he had to apologize because
Right.
we all knew date rape is not cool.
Yeah, which
But
is
when it comes,
almost a good thing, right? Like, at least that's not cool, right? Like, at least we know. Like,
but the
we
whole shoot 'em up bang
right,
thing is like, hey
right,
man, do you?
right,
You know,
right.
and
No,
that's something we got to get out of the hip hop
hundred
community and
percent,
out of the
hundred
black
percent,
community.
100%, 100%. I 100% agree with you on that. I like to, like, I'm a huge fan of Kanye West, right? And also, I've gotten into the last couple of years, I got into Dame Dash, right? And I think that those dudes are like, they're all about mentality. You know what I mean? Like, in my life, I love the mentality type people because I'm not trying to wait for somebody else to give it to me, or whatever. But in terms of how I want other people, I also can preach about the mentality. That's kind of what my channel is about a little bit. I try to tell people that gratitude and empathizing and believing in yourself and having faith in yourself. It doesn't have to be faith in a God. Faith is important. I do believe faith is important. It's not about faith in a God. I believe it's about faith in yourself, in something bigger than yourself. It could be your family. It could be your community. It could be the universe. It doesn't have to be a religion at all. But I think faith is important because if you don't have faith, without knowing, I don't know what tomorrow's going to be like. I can't predict that. Nobody can. But if I don't have faith that tomorrow's going to be better than today, then what's stopping me from wanting to just end this all for myself when things are really bad? So that's why I think faith is important. That mentality, everything you're talking about, I really do truly think that you're right to think it's so important, and it is. And I think that it's important to tell people that. But I think that it's also important to remember that we have to do both. We have to do both. We have to say, I'm going to give you as many opportunities as you can, to succeed, and if you
I
fail,
don't know
okay.
about how many. I don't know as many as you want, but I think that's what we do. That's why you have the left and the right. We're supposed to
You think
balance
we
each other
do?
out.
You think we do give people as many opportunities as they can?
No, I was saying I don't think we should
Oh, we do
give
both. You're
people.
saying. I see what you're saying. You're saying
Oh
we
yeah,
do both. Right.
yeah. As
But I
far
don't
as
think
trying
that
to
that's
help,
where we should separate ourselves. Like, I think that we should all be nuanced and like. I guess I think what you're saying is more like maybe some people on the right are more this side and some people are more that side, but both think that both is important.
yeah, because people are
Right.
different and how we
Right.
think and how we believe are different.
Right.
So it's usually people on the right think a different way and people on the left think a different way. But
Right.
with having those two balances, battling it out,
Right.
it somehow puts us where we need to be. And sometimes we go a little far this way, sometimes we go a little far that way. But it's a good to have those two people kind of pushing and pulling each other. And I
Right.
think that's a good thing. That's why I would hate to see conservative and liberals relationships in this country deteriorate to the point where we can't talk to one another.
Right. Which is
And
happening.
yes, which is
Which is
definitely happening.
which is exactly why I wanted to do this, was because I knew that despite however we might disagree, I knew that you want this conversation. You want a conversation to make people better. And, we are at the point, because of our government largely, I do blame the government for this. The government, I mean, there's a lot of issues, media and all these things like cable news, but our government has become just ineffective. They just have done nothing, like, except make society better for the richest, like, tenth of a percentage, hundredth of a percentage of the, income and distribution. Like, they've done nothing but make it better to be a billionaire and make it, for those 600 people, 670 people in the country. And they've just used our politics to just make us want to fight each other, and
So did you support the storm on the Capitol?
oh no, man. And that's funny. I'm glad you brought that up. I had another buddy of mine who said that I should support it because of that exact reason. And that's funny that you say that. I didn't support the storming Capitol because, I am aligned with the non-violent protest as much as I can be, as much as everyone can be. And I think that, like, they weren't protesting because of, like, inequality or something. Like, they weren't protesting because of, like, the vast inequality, income inequality, or wealth inequality that we're facing today. They were protesting because of a fake idea that they latched onto, because they could not give up the fact that their great white hope actually is a loser. He lost the popular vote twice, and this time we barely squeaked out that electoral college. I mean, like, it was a lot of votes, but, like, a few votes in Georgia could have changed that whole thing, man. I mean, I saw something that said I saw something that said 10,000 votes in Wisconsin and 10,000 votes, or 5,000 votes in Wisconsin, 5,000 votes in Arizona, and 10,000 votes in Georgia, and Trump would be the president if they just flipped. So it'd been 20,000 votes in total across 3 different states. 20,000 votes. He would have still won. Joe Biden still would have won by 7 million votes. Just like Hillary won by 3 million and lost, Joe Biden could have won by 7 million votes and still lost the presidency. That is a bad system, man. That's a bad system.
I rather like the electoral college, but I mean that's a
you like it
for
you like it.
I think, but if look, like you said, I wanted to have this conversation. We've been talking almost 2 hours.
Yes. Yep.
So I'm definitely open for this conversation. But
yeah,
if I would leave this conversation with one thing on a positive note, which I know you're all about positivity, right, brother?
Yep. Yes, sir.
The message that I think I want most people to get, if I could leave one thing behind, it would be life is not fair. It is so unfair. It is tough. It is rough. And it's not as tough as it used to be. But what I would say is, no matter what the people around you do, make sure that you are doing your best to be the best you can be. You're resilient and you strive to always be better than you was yesterday. And even if you don't make it to the moon, you might land amongst the stars.
Oh yeah. All right, man. So much more that we can talk about. And so much more that I'd love to talk about you. We're gonna have to do this again. I'm gonna have to give you the reins next time. You've been gracious. You've been a gracious guest. You've allowed me to rant and rave. Next time, I'm gonna come on your show for all intents and purposes. I'm assuming you're gonna put this on yours too. But for all intents and purposes, I'm gonna come on your show. You're gonna get to control the conversation, and we'll do it like that. But I appreciate those words. That is exactly why I wanted you on the show, because that's what's important. All right. I might disagree with you on what we should do on some policy, you know what I'm saying? But I would get up and I don't care if you were running for the Republican Party. I know you wouldn't in exactly in that way, because I know you're not exactly some, traditional Republican, but I would work with you. I would love to. I would start a nonprofit with you. I would do whatever, and maybe one day when I'm not buried in books, we will have to talk about something like that.
Definitely.
But thank you so much for being on here. Your desire to make the world better, and just by helping people however you can, is what is really important. And so I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You're great. You're a great host, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm gonna get better. Like I said, you're number one, man. So thanks for being my number one. And I promise, by the time we get back together again, I will be better. I'll be even better. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll figure it out. All right.
Yeah. I don't consider this a debate. I feel like we had a good conversation.
Yeah, totally. And that's what it's about. Honestly, it's not about, oh, you got to come away with my opinion, I got to come away with your opinion. If we were in the chambers of deciding for some city council, for some Senate office, whatever it is, we would come away with some policies that we could both say, you know what, I wanted this, but I came here, and he wanted this, and he came here, and we're both doing something that we can both feel good about for our country and for our city and for our state, et cetera, So that's exactly what I agree with you, man. Like, it's not about a debate. It's about how can we make this country a little better? How can we make our lives a little better for as many people as we can, even if it's a little baby step right now?
Definitely.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. We'll definitely do it again. We got our contact information. So thank you so much for being on the For Goodness Sake podcast. Guest number one, for all of our fans, we love you. Go check out the Javier show. Say it twice. Give them any information that you want so they can check you out.
Yeah, that's Javier, not Havier, Javier. So Javier show on YouTube. Say it twice. You can also find me at Javier270 Javier on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook as well by the same name. But just come over to my YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button and bell. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, it's great talking to you. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to do it again, brother.
All right. You too, brother. Thank you so much.
All right. Javier, take it easy.
Peace.